It was a quiet summer night in Dover, New Hampshire. The kind of evening when the air is still, the streets are empty, and porch lights glow like fireflies scattered across the neighborhood. Families were finishing dinner. Children were tucked into bed, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But at 8:30 p.m. on August 18th, 2025, that calm was shattered. The sudden crack of gunfire ripped through the stillness. 3, maybe 4 sharp bangs echoed down the street. Unmistakable, chilling. Windows rattled. Dogs barked. And in that moment, ordinary life dissolved into fear. Startled residents dialed 911. Almost instantly, voices trembling as they reported the sounds coming from the Long family's home, a modest 2-story house on the corner. To neighbors, the Longs were the picture of stability. They waved at you in the mornings. Their children played in the yard. Their social media posts showed smiling faces, vacations, and birthdays. Nothing about them hinted at the storm that was brewing inside. When the first patrol cars rolled up, red and blue lights cutting through the night, the house appeared still. The front door was locked, curtains drawn. No movement, no sound. Officers knocked, called out, nothing. Then, with neighbors watching from across the street, the police forced their way inside. What they found would forever haunt Dover. The Long family, once admired and seemingly close-knit, had collapsed in the most tragic way imaginable. A story of love and struggle, illness and desperation, had reached its breaking point within those walls. And in the days that followed, the town was left with questions that no one could easily answer. How could a family so outwardly strong fall into such darkness? What hidden pain had been carried behind closed doors? And what chain of events could possibly drive them here? This is a heartbreaking story of Emily and Ryan Long, a story of devotion, of burden, of quiet despair, and of a night that Dover will never forget. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers, 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers. It's available now on Amazon or as an instant PDF download from our website. You'll find the links in the description and pinned comment below. Now, let's begin. Emily Long was born on April 12, 1991. In Dover, New Hampshire, a small coastal city where old brick mills line the riverbanks, and life moves at a quieter pace than in the bustling cities nearby. To most, Dover was the kind of place where everyone seemed to know one another, where traditions were passed down, and where family ties ran deep. For John and Linda Long, Emily's birth marked more than just the arrival of a second child. Just months earlier, they had endured the devastating loss of pregnancy, an emptiness that lingered like a shadow in their home. When Emily came into the world, healthy and strong, she brought with her something more powerful than words: hope. Linda would later describe her as the light that reminded us we could heal. The Long household was modest, a small 2-story home with creaky floors, a tidy front yard, and the smell of Linda's cooking always wafting through the kitchen. John, a mechanical engineer, often came home late, hands rough from long hours at the plant. Linda, an elementary school teacher, balanced her career with her devotion to the children. Between their schedules, they made sure the home was steady, safe, and filled with affection. From the beginning, Emily was shaped by her parents' values. Education was more than a path forward. It was an expectation. Hard work wasn't negotiable. It was part of who the Longs were. And kindness, Linda believed, was the glue that held families and communities together. Emily carried these lessons with her everywhere. Teachers remembered her as the kind of student who always turned in her homework on time, never sought the spotlight, but quietly excelled. She was a child who raised her hand when no one else would, who stayed after class to help clean up, who offered a smile that made others feel at ease. Friends describe her as steady and approachable. She wasn't the loudest at parties, nor the most daring in a group, but she was reliable, the person you could confide in and know your secret was safe. There was a maturity to Emily, even in her teenage years, that made people trust her instinctively. After graduating high school, she chose to study hotel management, a path that surprised some but made sense to those who knew her well. Emily had an eye for detail, a natural calm in stressful situations, and a genuine ability to connect with people. Hospitality gave her the chance to use all three. At university, she thrived. Professors noted her leadership in group projects, her discipline, and her natural empathy. She didn't just want to manage. She wanted to care, to create environments where people felt welcomed and safe. It was during these formative years, as she built friendships, gained independence, and stepped into adulthood, that Emily met Ryan Long, a man whose path and struggles would one day intertwine with her own in ways neither of them could have imagined. Ryan Long was born in 1977, nearly a generation before Emily, in a small New England town where traditions were simple and life often revolved around school, church, and the rhythms of family. From the very beginning, Ryan was different from many of his peers, where other children were restless or impatient. He had a steadiness that seemed unusual for his age. Teachers often remarked that he was a thinker, a boy who listened more than he spoke, who seemed to consider the weight of words before using them. Music was Ryan's first love. As a teenager, he spent countless evenings strumming his guitar in the company of friends, playing in garages or at small gatherings. But while music gave him joy, it wasn't where he saw his future. Those closest to him noticed something deeper. Ryan's natural gift for understanding people. He had an ability to listen without judgment, to sit with someone in silence until they were ready to speak, and to offer gentle reassurance when life felt overwhelming. That quiet gift became his calling. After high school, Ryan pursued psychology, drawn to the idea of helping children and families through their most vulnerable moments. It was not an easy path, long hours of study, fieldwork, and emotionally heavy training, but Ryan excelled. His professors saw in him not just intelligence, but the kind of empathy that cannot be taught. By the time he began working in the school system, Ryan had already earned a reputation for his calm presence. Students struggling with anxiety, trauma, or family issues often sought him out. Parents spoke of his patience and dedication, while teachers leaned on him as a trusted partner in navigating difficult situations. He became the kind of professional who didn't just provide support, he inspired hope. Over the years, Ryan deepened his expertise. He earned a master's degree in counseling and became a board-certified behavior analyst, expanding his ability to work with children who face developmental and behavioral challenges. Each credential wasn't simply a career milestone. It was a reflection of a commitment to making a tangible difference in people's lives. But what defined Ryan most wasn't found in his resume. Friends described him as a man who radiated calm in the midst of chaos, who remembered birthdays, who showed up when no one else did. He wasn't loud or flashy, but steady, the person you wanted by your side when things fell apart. And above all, Ryan's greatest dream was deeply personal. To be a father. Those who knew him best said it was a role he longed for most, the purpose that gave meaning to all others. He wanted a family, a home filled with love and laughter, and children who would grow up knowing the same safety and stability he had once cherished. That dream would one day come true when his life crossed paths with Emily's, setting the stage for a partnership that would be built on devotion, resilience, and a shared vision of family. Emily and Ryan's love story didn't begin with fireworks or sudden infatuation. It was slower, steadier, the kind of relationship that built itself brick by brick. They started as friends in college, bonded over late-night study sessions and quiet conversations about the futures they dreamed of. What drew them together wasn't drama, but a shared sense of purpose, the belief in building a life grounded in stability, hard work, and care for others. Over the years, that friendship deepened into something more. By the time they married, those who knew them described the union as natural, two steady souls who simply fit. Their wedding was modest, attended by family and close friends. But what stood out was a promise they made not just to each other, but to the kind of family they wanted to build. That promise came to life in the years that followed. They welcomed 3 children: Parker, their adventurous and curious eldest; Ryan Jr., a sensitive and affectionate boy; and Lily, their youngest, who quickly became a heart of the household with her boundless energy and bright smile. Parenthood brought out the best in both Emily and Ryan. Emily, though balancing an increasingly demanding career, made sure her children never felt second to her work. She rose through the ranks of a restaurant chain to become director of operations, a role that required long hours, leadership, and constant problem-solving. Yet at home, she still managed school drop-offs, bedtime routines, and birthday parties with hand-decorated cakes. Ryan's career, too, continued to grow. As a school psychologist, he spent his days guiding children through struggles with anxiety, trauma, and family difficulties. His reputation for patience and understanding earned him admiration, not just from students, but from parents and colleagues. Later, he expanded his influence by teaching graduate courses at the local university, sharing his expertise with the next generation of counselors. Together, Emily and Ryan embodied balance. She was a driven professional who somehow managed to keep the household running. He was a calm presence who anchored the family with compassion and patience. Friends admired how they complemented each other. Neighbors described the Longs as a family you hoped to have next door, reliable, generous, and deeply engaged in the community. Their home reflected that image. Summer afternoons were filled with the sound of children's laughter spilling into the yard. Weekends often included family outings, small traditions like pancake breakfast, or evenings with Ryan playing guitar while the kids sang along. From the outside, they seemed to have built exactly what they had dreamed of in their youth, a safe, loving, and purposeful life. But as with many families, the surface didn't tell the whole story. Behind closed doors, quiet pressures began to build. Challenges that were invisible to neighbors, but all too real within the Long household. It would only take a few years before those hidden struggles would begin to unravel everything they had so carefully built. In early 2025, Ryan was diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer. The prognosis was grim. Most patients live just over a year, and treatment is grueling. The disease quickly took its toll. Ryan began experiencing seizures, cognitive decline, and personality changes. Emily suddenly became not only a wife and mother, but a full-time caregiver. To cope, she started documenting her experience on social media under the handle Ryan Cancer Wife. Her videos were raw, detailing the exhaustion of chemotherapy sessions, her struggle to remain strong for her children, and her own descent into depression. What began as a diary of resilience turned darker with time. Her posts revealed growing hopelessness and the crushing burden of caring for a dying husband while raising 3 children alone. On August 17th, 2025, Emily posted one final message, admitting she felt overwhelmed and defeated. The very next evening, tragedy struck. When police entered the Long residence on August 18th, they discovered a nightmare. Ryan, 48, was dead. Their 2 sons, 8-year-old Parker and 6-year-old Ryan, were each found with fatal gunshot wounds. Emily, just 34, was discovered in the master bedroom with a self-inflicted wound. A firearm was still in her hand. Miraculously, their youngest child, 3-year-old Lily, was found alive in her crib, spared from violence. Investigators later determined the sequence of events. Early that morning, Emily retrieved Ryan's legally purchased firearm. She shot Ryan in his sleep. She then killed her 2 sons with single shots to the head. Finally, she turned the weapon on herself. There were no signs of outside involvement. It was ruled a murder-suicide. As the investigation unfolded, new details emerged. Just days before the tragedy, Emily's employer accused her of embezzling over $660,000 from the restaurant chain where she worked. Bank records revealed altered statements, and her boss had already filed a formal complaint with authorities. This revelation stunned the community. Could the combination of Ryan's illness, caregiver exhaustion, depression, and legal troubles have pushed Emily to the edge? Authorities stressed that such tragedies rarely stem from a single cause. Instead, they are the product of overwhelming pressures converging all at once. The Dover community was shattered. Ryan had been beloved as a school psychologist. Emily admired as a devoted mother. Their children were cherished. Neighbors recalled seeing Parker and Ryan running a lemonade stand just weeks before their deaths. Vigils were held. The local school district lowered its flags. Counselors were brought in to support grieving students, staff, and neighbors. Meanwhile, state officials and mental health organizations began reevaluating how caregivers are supported. Crisis hotlines expanded. Programs were launched to train teachers, clergy, and community leaders to recognize caregiver burnout. But for Dover, the loss of the Long family left a void that no policy could ever truly fill. The story of Emily and Ryan Long is not just about tragedy. It's about the crushing weight of invisible struggles. From the outside, they looked like a model family. Inside, they were drowning under illness, financial strain, and emotional collapse. It forces us to ask difficult but necessary questions. How many caregivers around us are silently suffering? How often do we mistake strength for survival? And how can communities prevent such devastation from happening again? Behind every headline are real people, families who loved, dreamed, and tried to endure. Emily and Ryan's story reminds us to look deeper, to listen, and to recognize that sometimes the greatest battles are fought in silence.